the transition to Mastercam from Mastercam for SolidWorks. But this is really just getting you started, getting things going. I can't emphasize enough that we've got 6 guys in tech support now at QTE, and you should be able to, or you can call somebody, and we'll get you going on whatever it takes to get you going in Mastercam. 2023 for Mastercam for SolidWorks was released. I do expect some of the updates and patches to be applied just like 2023, but after that, it'll be the last version and stuff. I think there's a lot of benefits running Mastercam over Mastercam for SolidWorks. We are limited to the capability of what SolidWorks can give us when we're inside their product. And I think geometry selection and chaining should win you guys over, because it's super fast in Mastercam to pick stuff as we go through and grab a hold of things and grab geometry that we actually want to be able to machine. So this is a Mastercam file. I am in 2023. 2023 got released probably June 1st. It may have came out on the Friday before that, but it is out. It's available to download, update everything. We have got quite a few people that have switched over already, moving along, so it's moving. Some real positive things about going to straight Mastercam. Not your part files, but your post machine control definition don't have to be updated. Your tool libraries are all the same. Your operational libraries are all the same. All of those files are you used to using, you'll have to recreate any of those. You'll be able to reuse them in the Mastercam format. So no file structure needs to be changed or anything like that. Load up Mastercam and we'll pull from that same public, whatever version of Mastercam you're on, user folder, and be able to use all those existing files if you need it. The other thing that's all the same is the dialog boxes. Not the geometry selection, but all the parameters you're used to filling out, except for 2023, some things are a little bit different in there. Of course, version change, but if you go from Mastercam for SolidWorks 2022 to straight Mastercam, the dialog boxes are going to be the same. They're the same parameters to fill out, same things to grab, same everything you need. So that's not that much of a transition, just to, hey, I already know what parameters I want. The biggest thing you'll get to learn is how to select and pick geometry as you go through and grab some stuff. You have to also remember Mastercam is a full-blown CAD system. It doesn't have all the power and design capabilities as SolidWorks. I can draw everything, but I don't have flow analysis. I don't have a bill of materials. I can create assemblies, but they're all in one Mastercam file. They're not separated out into different part file structures and stuff like that. So we can draw everything I need to inside Mastercam. Pretty good solid modeling package. And I think it has a lot of tools we'll show you as we go on to be able to get your model ready to machine, where SolidWorks may have that. I'm not a SolidWorks expert. So some SolidWorks people would have to show me those tools, but I think Mastercam's done a great job of creating a set of tools to get your model ready to program and ready to move along to go through. So the first thing I want to go through is the user interface, and probably the biggest thing I could see of when you first jump into Mastercam is the wheel mouse actually spins backwards. That you can actually reverse that wheel, so when you scroll the mouse, and mine's backwards again, that as you scroll the mouse towards you, I expect the screen to come towards me. So under the file configuration, and I made notes on the screen, oh, I probably didn't keep it, view, that you could reverse the wheel mouse so it'll work similar to SolidWorks. And if you want to pan instead of rotate with a middle mouse button, that's more of an auto desk thing, but you guys are all SolidWorks users, so I'm not going to save this for whatever reason. It takes a little bit of time, but now mine will scroll just like SolidWorks does. You also have a 3D mouse that you can use, the space ball, we'll call it, 3D connection device. Those work similar. They work in SolidWorks, but you can use those inside Mastercam also as you go through things. We'll go through some, I think, important user interface items that we have on the screen to maybe, excuse me, interrogate a model or look at a model. There's a lot of stuff to cover in an hour, and we'll do what we can to get through as much as we possibly can. So one thing about the way Mastercam works and working with multiple parts, SolidWorks would open up them in the same screen and dialog box. Ours works more like Microsoft Word, as I have another session of Mastercam going right here, and I have a part file open. Oops, let me open a SolidWorks file to just say that we can open these files natively. We'll open a SolidWorks file. I have a few options when I open this, and we'll go through some of those. I can import the history from SolidWorks files. That is, you will get the cuts, the extrusions, the mirror features, provided Mastercam has that feature as a solid. If Mastercam doesn't have a solid, it'll come in as a dump solid. That portion of it will come in. Sometimes I ignore this all the time because of my tools to modify or change a model are easier to extract and work, but we'll show you through that as the presentation goes on. If you do have tool paths that are in a SolidWorks file, I can also import those, and those all come in with the right machine and control definition loaded, all the tool paths all ready to go, the stock's all set up, everything is there. So those are under the options, and you can set them as a default. Don't save anything, bring it in, there it goes. And this is very common for bringing in a SolidWorks file, that this is Mastercam's top view and it's in the wrong orientation to start machining from. If I spin things around a little bit, the middle mouse button works like it does in SolidWorks. Hold the middle mouse button, wheel down, and you can scroll a little bit. To get to different views, it's a right mouse click, top view, right mouse click, front view. There's bottom view of probably, oh, we're not at the correct view there. So right mouse click, there's a lot to manipulate. I know SolidWorks has it up on here, and there's hotkeys to get to stuff, but I typically drive things with the icons and stuff on the screen. From the Analyze menu itself, I'm going to see what I have on the screen right now. That when I see what I have on the screen, it says I got 3 trim surfaces and 1 solid. And that's a pretty common thing that I do, is I want to see what comes in. These are probably planes that came out of SolidWorks most likely. Here over the quick mask menu, the upper button is grab all surfaces, and I can do things with these surfaces if I want to. I don't really need them anymore, so I'm just going to delete them. But I could right mouse click and move them to levels or layers, and we'll talk about levels and layers as we go. But grab all surfaces, and I got to hit the delete key. Now I just have 1 solid on the screen. 1 solid on the screen, it's in the wrong orientation, and it's in the wrong view. You guys are very, very familiar, especially in the SolidWorks world, is creating planes in Mastercam. This dialog box is not too far off of what you get. There's a drop-down menu down here. I like it from a solid face. I just pick the solid face by default. Mastercam picks the middle of that face. I always like X plus to go to the right. Yeah, if I would have picked it, X plus would have gone to that direction. I accept that as the face that I want to machine. There it is. We can call it our part 0, whatever we need. I put things in caps because I think it's easier to read. There we go. There's my part 0. If I set this as my WCS, it will become my top view. This is just a very, very quick overview of planes. We'll talk a little bit more about it, but this is what I would do to get ready and start talking about this part. We're talking about analyze geometry, and I just want to interrogate a few things I could pick the edge of the part. Here it is, the edge pops up. What's the linear edge of that part, what it is, where it is. I could I could verify the distance between a couple of things, between that edge over here, this edge over there. This is just to look at the model and see what we got going on. I really like to look at things as we go through. I have very similar to your evaluate, maybe a draft angle evaluation that, there you go, all the blue surfaces are horizontal, green ones are vertical. Anything else is red is negative, which is the bottom of the part. Very simple stuff that we have under our analyze button to be able to look at what the model is. Dynamic, this is probably the biggest tool I ever use, because I could pick on a face and I could say that's got 5 degrees draft normal to the plane that I'm working on. Here's a radius up and down inside the part, half-inch radius up and down inside the part. So those are tools that I use all the time inside Mastercam to get used to what's going on and moving things around, making sure that I got the few that I wanted to talk about: analyze an entity, a distance, dynamic, draft angle, an entity. Just a quick overview of the interface. Right mouse click, go to my top view. This is now my top view that I set with my plane. If I would make my plane over here my graphics view, now that is the original view that it came in from, and I could start programming from this view. But really, we're not talking about toolpath stuff. I will get into some toolpath just to show you the geometry selection, but this is to get you familiar with the Mastercam for SolidWorks transition. That here's a little bit about the analyze dynamic things as we go through and what geometry we have. So next thing we'll talk about as we move along is importing SolidWorks files into Mastercam. I showed you the one example of bringing it in just as a solid. This solid that I did bring in, and I don't know why it's called quarter 20 tapped holes, it must be the name of this file in the SolidWorks model, has no features to it whatsoever. There's nothing there, because when I imported it, I just imported it as, we call it a dumb solid, has no history to it. If I go grab another SolidWorks model and bring it in, something pretty simple, here's a pocket one, and come over to my options right here, and I say import the history from SolidWorks. This does take time. There's really nothing I can do about how long it takes, because it'll open up a seat of SolidWorks in the background. I must have a seat of SolidWorks on my computer and a license to run it at that time when I hit open, and it'll bring in the history. The limitation we have is Mastercam has to have a matching feature to be able to bring that in, and our SolidWorks tree to be able to bring that in. If I want to bring the toolpaths in, I'll also get those. If you also bring in the toolpaths, you'll also get all the planes that you use to create all of anything inside Mastercam. So we'll go ahead and open this file. Nope, don't want to save that. Toolpaths came in fast. I do get a couple of warnings. I haven't tried this with a meeting going. It does take, and I switch up to something to make that screen. I switched out to a calculator. I close it, switch it a couple of times. To me, maybe it thinks it goes faster. I'm not sure. It eventually opened, but it just takes a while to calculate and get this to open in the background. And I do have a lot of stuff going in the background to open this. That it doesn't matter what I open, but eventually it'll come up and say, opening SolidWorks in the background, and then the bottle will pop up. There we go. There's our part. It was quick. This was a very, very small part, but in the SolidWorks tree, I get all the extrusions. If I double click on the extrusion, I get the geometry that I selected, everything that I get. I can modify this geometry. I can change the distance if I want to for my extrusion. I get this geometry to go. This is an option to be able to bring this in for the features that you have. As as be able to modify and edit the model once I get it inside Mastercam and change it in here instead of going back to SolidWorks and changing it. You'll have some engineering standards per the company, which one's now the master model. If you're an R&D shop and they don't care, fix it in Mastercam and move on. If you're in a machine shop, the SolidWorks is always the master model. This may not be a choice. You may bring this in as a dumb solid and continue on from there. So let's talk about what's on the screen. I talked about when I like to bring stuff in, I got a bunch of lines, I got arcs, I got some tools and an operation. If I go to my level manager, I do have some geometry on different levels of what came in and what's out here. And in SolidWorks, in the feature tree, you have the ability to hide solids, turn off sketches, turn off certain things. Inside Mastercam, I do that via level control. That I grab a hold of the geometry that I want, label it, put it on a level, toggle it on and off inside the level manager to get things what I need to do to manipulate, to turn things off and turn them on. I can't turn them off in the tree, the feature tree. The feature tree over here, really I call this the operations manager, where all the operations of the toolpaths get done. It's also a plane manager too. Some of these planes are new. Solids manager is also here. Level manager. I don't use recent features very much. But if I would use my quick mask menu over here on the side, and the top one says select all wireframe, and I grabbed it all, and I right mouse clicked out on the screen and I say change levels, I could name this, move this to a level of 2500 or so, type in wireframe, removing the geometry of the wireframe. Right here, the dialog box that says force visibility off, and it just kind of cleans up my screen all the way through. And now I don't have all the data on my screen. I only have one solid, and you'll be able to just chain the solid to be able to your toolpath and not mix and match and get them confused to what's on the screen. It is a little bit less overhead on the graphics screen if I only have so much showing. I didn't delete it. I didn't get rid of it. It is still out there. I can make it my main level and turn everything off. Now I just got wireframe of what they used to draw this part with. We'll grab this geometry because I think it's kind of hard to see for me. Grab it all, maybe change the thickness of the line. I like it a little bit thicker, easier for me to see. And maybe change the color, something blue. I like drawing it in a little darker contrast color like that, so it shows up. So just like Windows, Control A allows you to select it all, or Windows select it all, and I can manipulate the attributes of the geometry that I'm seeing in Mastercam. Just like in SolidWorks, the escape key is your friend. Beat on the escape key until you're back to the main menu, continue on and get where you need to go to be able to import and move geometry around as you need to import the models. This one actually came in with toolpaths from Mastercam. I can modify or change it, do what I need to. Here's my solid back with my wireframe turned on. Turn off levels. There we go. Now I can continue to program this part. And I have a little more complex part to talk about for geometry selection to move in, and we'll talk about that here in a second as I move on. So the workflow, as you bring stuff in, modify, simplify a solid, creating planes, part setup, what do you do with a model change? Did I lose a chaining? Oh, kind of cut it out of order a little bit. I want to talk about chaining versus solids versus wireframe, because Mastercam defaults to wireframe, and it may throw you for a little bit of a loop when you get in there to say, hey, how come I can't pick my geometry? So let me pick a part that has a little more depth and stuff to it. We'll grab this advanced pocket. Don't save anything, so here's my advanced pocket. We'll scroll it out a little bit. I've already got a plane set up. I've already got geometry. This one actually has some toolpaths on it to help me kind of remember of how to program it and what I did to go through it. But really what I want to do is talk about the advantages of what Mastercam has to be able to pick wireframe geometry to machine stuff. Let's talk about a simple contour first. I just want to contour something. The default pops up as wireframe. I don't have any wireframe. I got these lines out here, but my part itself has no wireframe on it. I really can't pick anything on the geometry at all. And I'll be the first one to recommend, don't even create it unless you absolutely have to, you need it. The old school way of programming, you guys have never had to do this, was bring in a solid model, create a wireframe over the whole top of it, and then maybe hide the solid and program strictly off the wireframe. We don't do that anymore. We work strictly off the solid. Make sure you switch over to the solid. Here is your kind of secret notes and tool tips as we go along to grab stuff. I want to focus on these 6 icons right here to grab geometry as I want to program stuff. I'm in the middle of a contour. I'm going to grab a hold of this shared outer edges. I want to go grab this face. And this is some of the neatest things that I think Mastercam has done to be able to machine. My cursor was really kind of close over to this side. I do it without even thinking. Mastercam automatically grabbed this edge and said, we're going to chain this. If I would chain this in SolidWorks, for me, 9 times out of 10, the arrow is going in the wrong direction and it wants to cut to the wrong side, or it doesn't start where I want to. Mastercam, if I pick it in the right spot from the graphics screen, if I pick it right there, it picks there and it goes exactly where I want to. The reason it's only picking this edge right here is because I have shared outer edges only. Let's pick a few more some more geometry. How about a solid face? I zoom in a little bit with my wheel mouse. I'm zooming in, and I want to start right here on this edge. So that's where my cursor is going to pick. I hope. Pick. Hey, it's not what I expected. Let's get rid of that. Let's try a loop instead. See if a loop works for me. There we go. So I picked the loop. It started exactly where my cursor was. I think the chaining geometry, I can pick anywhere I want to. There it is. Starts exactly where I want to. There's no reviewing of what your chain is. You don't have to look at what you got. There's my tool path right there. We're going to do a very simple contour operation. I do have some tools inside here. I think they're all a little big. We could grab another tool library from. Grab a tool. Coming. Thought I picked it. There it is. Oop. Little cutter right there. I'm not going through all the parameters. I just want to glance at a few of them to make sure. Yep, I've changed a few defaults on mine. Want to make sure my linking parameters set to incremental. And just a hot tip for 2023, we now have this apply button. We used to have a magnifying glass up here, but I hit apply before I'm ever out of the operation. And there it is. It's starting exactly where I picked. I didn't have to go manipulate the start point or change some chains or other chains, whatever I needed to. It just automatically started where I wanted to grab that geometry to machine what I want to. And that's what I mean. We're really not talking about full-blown toolpath creation. I'd like to review some of those other chaining features of grabbing geometry. I do have myself personally, I like to turn off all the operations as I go through to get what I needed to grab stuff. How about a dynamic toolpath for now? We'll bounce back and forth. Pick an avoidance region. We'll pick an avoidance. Maybe grab a hold and flip my solid over to the other side. Grab that face. Notice where it picked exactly where the face is. And that was upside down, so I really picked it on the wrong side, and I could easily reverse it. Doesn't matter for this toolpath. I'm a big fan of this preview. We're in dynamic. There's a toolpath. Also notice when I'm doing dynamic where the preview shows up. That looks pretty good, but that's not what I want to do. I want to come from the outside. Yep, that's what I want. Most likely this is where it'll want to machine, so I got to make sure I look at my linking parameters. And this is nothing new to Mastercam, whether it's Mastercam for SolidWorks or Mastercam. I just know that preview is not the right spot, and most likely my depth will be wrong too. How about a 1/2 inch cutter to machine that? Jump into the linking parameters and go tell it a depth of where it needs to be. There we go. Yes, breakthrough amount, all that other, and see where my cut parameters are. 50% step over is pretty good. Hit the apply button, generates a toolpath. I get to preview it before I get out of it. Looks pretty good, I like it. We'll continue on of grabbing geometry. This dynamic, notice I didn't pick anything to avoid, or didn't pick anything to machine. I only picked avoidance stock. That's the what to machine is actually from the stock setup. This is typical of the way Mastercam works. This is very common in the way it machines and moves forward. If you're not familiar with dynamic, that some kind of a 2D class or the power users class would be good to take. Again, if you got questions, we want you guys to be as successful as possible. Give us a call and we'll help you talk through stuff as we go through. Another dynamic toolpath that we have. Oh, another toolpath that we have is maybe a dynamic. And what would I like to machine is a machining region right here. I'm going to pick a loop right here to machine. That's what I want. And you guys had these machining regions, avoidance regions, air regions. You had all of that inside Mastercam for SolidWorks, but it just, the selection of the bar itself is just a little bit different. What would I like to avoid? Maybe I'll just pick this top of this face right here. I could not use a face here because I'm going to use island facing in this operation. That'll look pretty good. I kind of like that, the way it'll generate. There we go. Probably have to grab some kind of a smaller tool. Sure. 3/16 cutter. It's under depth cuts. Machines, my computer's a little sluggish. I am recording this in the background for a little bit later. Use island depths. What do you want for a step over? 50%. Some parameters we got. Let me make sure my step over is pretty big. And I'm a big fan of making this as big as I possibly can first time through. Generate the toolpath and saying, do I like it? There we go. Oops, and I got a lot of step downs. That's why I do this. I don't know, step down maybe an inch. I only want to show you the end. I don't want to see the whole thing. I only want to see the one pass, and then I will go back and put in all those depth cuts. So I'm able to cut, we're only talking about 2D right now. I'm able to cut all those pockets just with one operation using 2D dynamic to be able to machine that and very, very easily and quickly be able to pick those solids and machine. I have one more dynamic toolpath to show you, and then we'll move on to some other things as you need to and manipulate. How's my geometry? This file probably has some extra stuff in it. It's got a vise, got movable jaws in it for setup purposes if you need to. There's your level layer management that we call it. We call it layers and other software. Mastercam calls it levels. But and I'll show you at the end how to merge in a part, whether it's a new SolidWorks model or you want to merge in a vise. Works very, very similar in the same process. But maybe I don't need all of this to program my part for one. When I fit to the screen, I don't want to have all that on my table and as I go through. So the last toolpath I want to show you, same toolpath, oops, fit, went out in space somewhere. The last toolpath I'll show you is we used it. What do I want to machine? And we'll use this outer edges again, and I machine that right here. We'll come up over and do the other one too. Grab that one, like it. We're going to do a dynamic, and if I hit preview, that's what it's going to machine, even if I say from the outside that it won't machine this colored area, the striped area. It'll actually do your high-speed loops right in here, and that's not valid. I'll probably snap a cutter or two right inside there. So I need to bring this toolpath out a little bit further for it to machine correctly for my dynamic. That would be listed as an air region right here. I do have this single edge chaining that I could grab a hold of. One single edge chaining says shift click to select tangent edges. So if I hold the shift key down and pick it, it picks all those tangent edges. That's great. But I only want this edge right here. So we'll get rid of this geometry. We'll try this in 3D shift click. I would think it'll, there we go. So I held the shift key down, I hit the edge, perfect. It picked the geometry that I wanted. And I was able to do that with shift key, one mouse click, got probably 1, 2, 3 faces or so. But there's actually a faster way, the outer edges. So anything that's open to the air, opposite of this one, lets me pick on the geometry on the outside. Extremely quick and fast to grab edges on the outside and grab this geometry. Back to my preview for my chain. Now it's going to bring my dynamic roughing operation all the way out to the edge of that part. And now I'd be able to machine the edges of those parts. There we go. Go grab. I make these cut parameters big, and I don't care about stock and the amount to leave. And I am set to incremental. I'm a pretty big fan of being incremental. Oh, I know what I did. I didn't look at my tool. Tool path. I bet I got a really big tool. 2-inch face mill. For whatever reason, defaults I have is a big 2-inch face mill. Got to pick a tool. My computer's running, like I said, a little sluggish right now in 2023. Probably be recording the video and doing a couple of sessions of Mastercam and all this stuff we got going on now. So there's a very, very quick dynamic tool path to be able to machine from and get things that, and it's just about geometry selection. So far, I've only talked about contour, dynamic. Besides drilling holes and maybe a little face stuff, those are probably 80% of the tool paths that I do in Mastercam. Dynamically rough the whole part if I don't use OptiRough, and then come back with a simple contour and finish it. I'm very, very close to finishing this whole part. I know a lot of you guys may think about, man, I got a big hole right here. I would circle mill this, but you'd be surprised on how many people that I've shown in class that are now dynamically milling this big hole with a smaller cutter, and it just says, what do I want to machine, and circle, and then go. Who cares about it? Biggest drawback is picking it, so there's just some machining practices and tips and tricks to go through to grab stuff. So there really is no wireframe on the part itself to select as I pick things. If I would do a simple contour of the outside of the part, simple contour, if I would switch to the wireframe mode, C-plane only looks at things in this view, only looks at things in this view. And if I pick the bottom of the geometry, it'll only pick things on the bottom of the geometry, or it'll pick things on the top of the geometry. This is picking wireframe. There, it picks the exact same way. That it picks the exact same way as a solid, but I am trying to get you guys away from that, that I am able to profile the outside of this part with simple wireframe. Maybe you want to qualify the edges or something like this to contour the outside, but there's not much I have to do with wireframe. On very rare occasions, I do have to create a little bit of geometry to get my toolpath to do what I want to, and that's no difference than SolidWorks. I'd have to create a sketch or add a couple of lines or something like that to get the toolpath. Mastercam's pretty quick to grab the geometry to do what I need to create that. So that's the geometry selection in the 2D stuff. I know I only talked about a couple of toolpaths just for the geometry selection and how to pick chains a little bit different, a little bit quicker to pick them, I think, in Mastercam and SolidWorks. It is for me 100%. So hopefully some of that will help you save a lot of time when you're picking geometry, not worrying about what direction you're going. Solids chaining wireframe versus solids. Next thing I'd like to talk about is actually working on, oops, let me turn on my views. I know what part I want. Talk about a little bit about 3D and grabbing parts. Don't save anything. So as I mentioned earlier, this would be a part that I would want to machine, whatever it may be. As I want to machine it, you go through your stock setup. It is quite a bit different in 2023, and it's a whole nother subject. Wanted to get through the whole topic before we venture down that, if I do get that far, but I want to make sure that these edges are sharp. So I really can't maybe waterline the whole thing, or I want to put some plugs inside this geometry to fill it in so I can machine it the way I would want to, and then come back and machine these individually to make sure these edges stay sharp, the way they make sure the geometry, or optimize motion of my toolpath to get really what I want inside the geometry. As you work inside Mastercam, I would probably want those plugs on a different level. So I would jump into the level, and I use 2500 because nobody else does. I could type 2500, and yeah, we've got some plugs in here already. This is actually a file we have in our 3D class that we use, and we show people how to do this plugs too. And I've labeled it so it makes a little sense. I've only got one piece of geometry on the screen. There we go. Jump back to the toolpath. And here I'm going back to my practices is what's on the screen. I've got some tools in my library. I only got one solid. There is no wireframe out there at all. So I can move on and plug this part. Under model prep, you can do a lot of stuff. I could actually go find all the fillets in this part and get rid of them if I want to. I could change them. I can modify them. I can move them. I could push pull. I could grab a face and make it move if I can move it along if I need to. Oh, there we go. Some stuff's possible. Some stuff's not possible of how do you want to modify or drag a face or what you want to do to it. I don't modify a model except for machining conditions more than anything. That would be one avenue you can do for a change in a SolidWorks model is push, pull, drag the new model to fit what you need to. But here under modify a feature, I want to add a body. So I'm going to go grab a couple of faces right here and then click on it. And I've created a plug in that face. Now, how you do that in SolidWorks, I'm not a SolidWorks expert. I can get both of these at the same time too. That just makes it a little bit cleaner for me to machine, a little less motion. Then I would come in and pick that out a little bit later to clean that out with. But I could have probably done all these at the same time, but I just grab them all and grab. Can I window select this? I can now window select in Mastercam. Yep, that looks pretty good. Oops, I got a couple of faces I don't want. A little the way Mastercam, I don't have to hold the control key down. I got an extra face picked. I could just click it and get rid of it. If I pick this face and I don't want it, I can pick it again. Now I can create a solid, and now I've got all that plugged. And as I've programmed over the years, that, believe it or not, I like to do the finished stuff first. I think it's the hardest. So how would I probably approach this part itself? Probably some kind of waterline operation to grab what I want. Go pick geometry. Here is shift click to select tangent faces. Hold the shift key down and it picked everything tangent. These are different solids. I could have removed that from the part itself, but then I lose the integrity of the model. So that's why I leave those plugs in there. So I want that plug. I want this plug over here. I want that plug there. I'm done. I've got, that's what I'm going to machine right there. It's all color coded for me. Shows up extremely well. It's showing me stock. That's my default. I could rough it without stock. I could just say reset my stock values right there and they all go to 0. I would probably save this as a default at this time. Go grab some kind of a tool that I want to cut that with. What about a 3/8 cutter to waterline? Got a screen flash there. I'm not sure where that's from. And yeah, we'll just pick the defaults. And just like me picking a big old rough amount, I got a big step step over them out. Oops. I don't want to wait too long to generate a toolpath. Hit the apply button. Generate my toolpath in the background. It's multi-threaded. And there is my toolpath to finish that part. Pretty slick, pretty easy. Oops. I know what I forgot. And that's very common for me to teach how I machine. I just jumped in waterline, said generate a toolpath. As you guys know, I probably need some kind of tool containment boundary. And I'm a big fan of this contact point now. We've had this for the last couple of versions, and they keep putting them in toolpaths. Let me unshade it, shade it back up again. There we go. There we go. How about unshade it? Nope, nothing on the inside. With high-speed toolpaths, you're allowed to have multiple containment boundaries, one for the outside of the part, one for the inside of the part. And Mastercam's doing a very, very good job of, to me, that's a pretty decent clean toolpath. I've got a little work to do with, you know, my rapid moves and on and off the part, although that might scare somebody out on the shop floor. But other than that, I've got that all roughed out or finished, and I'm ready to run my OptiRough toolpath and say just OptiRough the whole thing, equal scallop the top, and I'm ready to go. That's a very, very quick, fast way of plugging your part, getting solids going, and create another plug if you want to. Model prep, modify a feature, create a body, and can I window select this? Boop, I got it off my screen a little bit. Got most of them. Top, pull the shift key down and the mouse button down. I missed a few. Window again, there we go. There's all the geometry that got a couple of holes that I don't need. That's all right. And probably grabbed something I did not want. How about top screen again? There we go. And window selected. See if I got something that I don't want. There we go. Told you it was my mistake. Now I'm probably ready to run into OptiRough and say, OptiRough this whole part, let it go and come back and machine some other stuff out and get geometry as I need to. As I emphasize again, this is not a toolpath class. It's geometry selection in Mastercam, plugging the model, getting it ready to machine, getting things ready to go as we go through stuff. So just as pushing forward to pick geometry as we go through level management. If I turn off my model, there's all the plugs that I've created. And if I want to go back to my original model, there's the original model, and I'm ready to use that to maybe file compare or machine with or do what I need to get the geometry done. Did I cover most of everything that I want to do? The last thing I want to do is bring in a file and maybe handle a part change inside Mastercam itself. So we'll go grab a part that I have inside Mastercam. Yep, I'm in the right spot, and I got to make sure that I grab the correct one. We'll grab this one off a detailed list. I know what I want. SolidWorks model right here, options, and I'm not bringing it as the SolidWorks history. I'm just going to bring it in as we call it a dumb solid, because I think with my model prep tools, I can manipulate it fairly well. So there's my part, brought it in as inches. I'm ready to machine on it. And I've got some tool paths. I got it all set up. I'm ready to create some stuff. And engineering said, "Whoa, wait a minute. We got changes to that. You gotta modify that. You gotta do something different." And this will probably be where you'll have to do a little more work than what you were doing in SolidWorks. That you got to decide where the changes are, either use our model prep tools and fix it, or just go address the toolpaths that actually change. So I'm going to come in and say file merge, and hopefully engineering does good work to say that I've got a Rev B, and they list where Rev B is, and we'll bring that in. And like we talked about earlier, that I could say stick this on a level if I want to, and now I have two different models, and now I'm able to bring them in. I don't really see much difference. I see one model on top of another model, and I don't see any difference. That if I look at my part in a translucent view and kind of look around a little bit, I see, hey, maybe there's a step. I got a different, and that's where engineering does have to tell you that there's something different in this model. If they don't tell you, and it's all on you to figure out where it's at, it may be a little more challenging to get that. But here's the model and that face is a little bit shallower, and they move those holes up a little bit in the part that I could just address the tool paths. I don't have anything programmed, but address the tool paths that machine this and machine just this area on the new model, and let it go. Ship it, let it go machine everything. It is a little bit of a work to fix it all inside Mastercam by grabbing stuff that I don't have a problem inside model prep by push-pull, but as you can see, I can grab this face and start pulling on it, and it does funny things with the chamfers and all the counterbore stuff and everything. Well, that's not going to work. So maybe I got to go change a few things. Is what if I just pick these chamfers? Let me pick the chamfers right here. Pick the chamfers right there. There we go. I want to remove them completely from the part. And now I could come in and push pull, and I can grab this. And engineering said this face moved out by 5 millimeters, and I moved the face out by 5 millimeters. There it is. And if I want to toggle my other model on, now you can almost see that they overlay each other completely. And if you wanted to really make sure, you could go to the home screen and analyze dynamically that face and analyze dynamically the face on this model, or use your new model in your verify process to say, hey, make sure that all the colors are good. And as you verify and making sure those models are good. Now I need to go back and fix this model just by either changing the depths of my holes or putting chamfers on. Why don't we fix the hole depths first, because the holes are a little deep right now. Under model prep, I could have it go find holes. Create a single operation all the way from the solid, go find a bunch of holes, and found 16 of them. There we go. Oops. If I go back to my solids screen here, here's the original one I got, and here's the 2.5 millimeter holes that I actually have that are a little bit too deep, that I can now edit these holes because they're now features. There's the diameter, there's the distance, and I want to subtract 5 millimeters from that distance. Now they're only 12 millimeters deep, and now the holes have been made shallower through my part. Oops, I got to regen the model. I said, those don't look shallower. Those do look shallower. So now we're at the full shallow. I can come back to my solids tool right here, put some chamfers on the part. Probably should either go back to the original model and say, how big of a chamfer do I want? 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters. Does that look pretty good? There's 3 millimeter chamfer on the part. And now I would just go back and apply those to the new model. And this is now the exact same thing as I merged in to be able to visually compare and look at what's changed and what hasn't. If it's not prismatic and it's not a bunch of holes and it's 3D, bring in a model and hit OptiRough and hit your 3D toolpath and then generate a toolpath and move on. And I question how many times things change in engineering that you have to go back and redo stuff, to where I don't think the chaining of the geometry may help you save a little time and stuff. So far, I think that's what I had for my presentation. Get going. Oop, we'll fit to the screen. Fit. There we go. Talk a little bit about more training. As I mentioned, 2D class, call somebody in tech support. We'll tell you if it's a training or if you're pushing the limit of support. There's a core class at Mastercam University that you guys can go take, be able to take the help the transition. It's I have to talk to sales, price, and stuff, and I don't know how many hours of training, but it's a pretty decent class to go through, and we're here to make you guys successful for this transition as much as we possibly can.